The 4 days battle was a naval battle of the Second Anglo-Dutch War, fought from the 1st of June to the 4th of June 1666 in the Julian or Old-style calendar then used in England off the Flemish and English coast. It remains one of the longest naval engagements in history. In June 1665 the English had soundly defeated the Dutch in the Battle of Lowestoft, but failed to take advantage of it. The Dutch spice fleet, loaded with fabulous riches, managed to return home safely after the Battle of Wagen. The Dutch navy was enormously expanded through the largest building program in its history. In August 1665 already the English fleet was again challenged, though no large battles resulted. In 1666, the English became anxious to destroy the Dutch navy completely before it could grow too strong and were desperate to end the activity of Dutch raiders as a collapse of English trade threatened. On learning that the French fleet intended to join the Dutch at Dunkirk, the English decided to prevent this by splitting their fleet. Their main force would try to destroy the Dutch fleet first, while a squadron under Prince Rupert was sent to block the Strait of Dover against the French, who did not appear. At the start of the battle, the English fleet of 56 ships commanded by George Monk, 1st Duke of Albemarle, who also commanded the Red Squadron, was outnumbered by the 84-strong Dutch fleet commanded by Lieutenant Admiral Michiel de Ruyter. The battle ended with an English flight into a fog bank after both fleets had expended most of their ammunition. The Dutch inflicted significant damage on the English fleet. The English had gambled that the crews of the many new Dutch ships of the line would not have been fully trained yet, but were deceived in their hopes. They lost 10 ships, with slightly over 1,000 men killed, including 2 vice-admirals, Sir Christopher Mimes and Sir William Berkeley, while about 2,000 English were taken prisoner. Dutch losses were 4 ships destroyed by fire and over 1,550 men killed, including Lieutenant Admiral Cornelisz Evertsen, Vice Admiral Abraham van der Hulst and Rear Admiral Frederick Stashower. First day. On the first day, Monk, sailing in the van with George Iskew's White Squadron behind him and Thomas Teddyman's Blue Squadron forming the rear, surprised the Dutch fleet at anchor near Dunkirk. Despite disadvantageous weather conditions, Monk decided to attack the Dutch rear under Lieutenant Admiral Cornelis Tromp, hoping to cripple it before the Dutch centre and van could intervene. After sending a message to Rupert to join him if possible, Monk aggressively attacked Tromp, who fled over the Flemish shoals. Monk then wore to the northwest, to meet the Dutch centre and van. Tromp again turned, but his ship Liefde collided with Groot Hollandia. Vice Admiral Sir William Berkeley saw this and closed in with HMS Swiftsure. Immediately Calentzugenreiger came to the rescue of their commander, destroying the rigging of the English ship with chain shot. The Reiger then managed to board the Swiftsure. Berkeley challenged the Dutch sea soldiers, shouting, "You dogs, you rogues, have you the heart, so press on board," but was fatally wounded in the throat by a musket ball, after which the Swiftsure was captured. In the powder room the constable was found with his throat cut. He had tried to blow up the ship, but his own crew killed him first and drenched the powder, claiming afterwards the man had cut his own throat from pure frustration. The damaged HMS Sevenoaks was captured by the Bessemer, while HMS Loyal George tried to assist the Swiftsure, but this only resulted in the capture of both ships. The embalmed body of Berkeley, after being displayed in The Hague, was later returned to England under a truce, accompanied by a letter of the States General praising the Admiral for his courage. HMS Rainbow, one of the 2 scouts who had first spotted the Dutch fleet, got isolated and fled to neutral Ostend, chased by 12 ships from Tromp's squadron, while the other, the Kent, left the battlefield in search of Rupert's squadron. Both fleets bombarded each other in a line of battle. The Hof van Zeeland and the Duivenvoorde were hit by fire shot and burnt. The Dutch didn't know of the existence of this type of ammunition, consisting of hollow brass balls filled with a flammable substance. so they were greatly surprised. Luckily for them, the English had only a small supply because of the high cost of production. Monk retreated for the night, but the ship of Rear Admiral Harman, HMS Henry, drifted to the Dutch lines and was set aflame by 2 fireships. The parson asked Harman what could save them, when the latter sarcastically replied that the good parson could always jump overboard. To his horror, the panicked clergyman at once followed his advice together with a third of the crew. All drowned. Harman made an end to the panic by threatening with a drawn sword to run through anyone showing the slightest inclination to abandon ship. Evertson now closed in and inquired whether Harman would perhaps like to surrender. It came as no surprise to him. The renowned fighter respectfully declined, yelling, "I'm not up to it yet." Despite repeated Dutch attacks and the loss of 2 masts, one in its fall crushing Harman's leg, the fire was put out and the Henry escaped, with its last shot shooting Evertson in 2. Second day. On the morning of the second day, Monk decided to destroy the Dutch by a direct attack and sailed to them from the southwest, but de Ruyter in the De Zeven Provinciën crossed his line sailing to the southeast, heavily damaging the English fleet and gaining the weather gauge. HMS Anne, HMS Bristol and HMS Baltimore had to return to the Thames. After a calm used for repairs, he turned to attack the English from the south with the red flag raised, the sign for an all-out attack. But just when he approached the enemy line, he noticed to his dismay that part of the rear squadron under Tromp had got separated and now was positioned to the other side of the English line, who had surrounded Tromp and were giving him his belly full. Often this is explained by assuming Tromp had not followed orders, but although he is indeed infamous for his usual insubordination, this time he simply had not seen the sign flags, and the lookout of the center mistakenly reported a confirmation sign. De Ruyter took in the red flag and broke through the enemy line with Vice Admiral Johan de Liefde, while the rest of the Dutch fleet under Aert van Nes headed south. He secured all of Tromp's ships except the burnt Liefde and the sinking Spiegel, on which Vice Admiral Abraham van der Hulst had just been killed by a musket shot in the breast, and returned to join van Nes and the main force by again breaking through. Noticing with satisfaction the second time the English ships quickly gave way, Tromp, switching to his 4th ship already, then visited de Ruyter to thank him for the rescue. Both men were in a dark mood. Rear Admiral Frederick Stashower had also been killed. The previous day, the damaged Hollandia had been sent home together with the Gelderland, Delft, Riga, Asperen and Bessemer to guard the 3 captured English vessels. Now also the damaged Pacificatia, Vrijheid, Provincie Utrecht and Kalantzug had to return, and only a handful of the rear squadron remained. Besides, the enemy had again gained the weather gauge, the dangers of which became immediately clear as George Askew, seeing the 2 admirals together in a vulnerable position, tried to isolate them. With great difficulty they managed to return to their main force. Both fleets now passed 3 times in opposite tack. On the second pass, De Zeven Provinciën got damaged and de Ruyter retreated from the fight to repair his ship. Later some historians would accuse him of cowardice, but he had strict detailed written orders from the States General to act exactly so, to prevent a repeat of the events of the Battle of Lowestoft, where the loss of the Supreme Commander had wrecked the Dutch command structure. Lieutenant Admiral Aert van Nes led the third pass. As the Dutch were in a leeward position, the guns had a superior range and some English ships now took dreadful damage. HMS Loyal Subject turned for the home port and had to be written off on arrival. HMS Black Eagle raised the distress flag but simply disintegrated before any ships could assist. Then, at 3 in the afternoon, a Dutch flotilla of 12 ships appeared on the horizon. Monk was shocked, not because the event was totally unexpected, but because his worst fear seemed to come true. The English had learned from their excellent intelligence network that the Dutch planned to keep a strong 4th squadron behind as a tactical reserve. Surely these new ships must be the avant-garde of a fresh force. Monk ordered to check for the number of operational English ships. When only 29 ships reported to have any fight left in them, and Rupert was still nowhere to be seen, he decided to withdraw. In fact, de Ruyter had just before the battle been convinced by the other admirals to use only 3 squadrons. Monk had never noticed that the Rainbow had disappeared. Indeed, he couldn't understand where Berkeley had gone either. The dozen ships were those of Tromp's squadron giving chase and now rejoining the fight after the intended prey had escaped to Ostend. The entire English fleet tacked to the southwest at 4. The straggling St. Paul was captured in the evening. Third day. On the third day the English continued to retreat to the west. The Dutch advanced on a broad front, Van Ness still in command, both to catch any more stragglers and to avoid the enormous 32-pounder stern cannons of the big ships. In the evening Rupert, having already on the first day been ordered to join Monk, at last appeared with 20 ships. He had been unable to reach Monk earlier because he had sailed as far as White in search of the imaginary French fleet. Monk ordered his fleet to set a straight course for the Green Squadron despite warnings that this would take them over the infamous Galloper Shoal. At low tide, HMS Royal Charles and HMS Royal Catherine indeed were grounded but managed to get free in time. HMS Prince Royal got stuck however. Vice Admiral George Askew, commander of the White Squadron, pleaded with his men to stay calm until flood would lift the ship, but when 2 fire ships approached the crew panicked. A certain Lambeth struck the flag and Askew had to surrender to Tromp on the Gouda. The first and last time in history an English admiral of so high a rank would be captured at sea. De Ruyter had clear orders to destroy any prize. As the English fleet was still close he couldn't disobey in the matter of such a capital vessel. Ordered the Prince burnt. Tromp didn't dare to make any objections because he had already sent home some prizes against orders, but later he would freely express his discontent. In 1681, still trying to get compensation from the Admiralty of Amsterdam for this perceived wrong, Van Ness now tried to prevent both English fleets from joining. But when they both sailed behind the back of his blocking squadron, de Ruyter took over operational command and ordered to wait. This way he regained the weather gauge. Fourth day. Early next morning 5 more ships and another fireship joined the English fleet. As against these, 6 of the most damaged ships were sent home for repair, thus enforced with 23 fresh ships and so numbering in between 60 to 65 men of war and 6 fireships. The English attacked in line on the 4th day with Sir Christopher Mimes now in charge of the van, Rupert of the centre, and Monk of the rear squadron. But the Dutch, now to the southwest and reduced to 68 ships, had the weather gauge and also attacked aggressively. De Ruyter had tried to impress on his flag officers that the fight of that day would be decisive for the entire war. The English attack, vulnerable from a leeward position, faltered. De Ruyter had planned to disrupt the English line by breaking it in 3 places, cutting off parts of the English fleet before dealing with the rest. Vice Admiral Johan de Liefde on the Riddership and Mimes on the Victory began a close-quarters duel. 2 musket balls hit Mimes, fatally wounding him. He died on his return to London. The English regrouped, trying to break free to the south by executing 4 passes in opposite tack, but Tromp and Van Ness surrounded them. Monk then wore to the north. Tromp's squadron was routed, the landman burnt by a fireship. Van Ness was forced to withdraw. De Ruyter, more anxious than at any other moment in the battle and fearing the fight lost, raised the red flag and sailed past Rupert to attack Monk from behind. When Rupert tried to do the same to him, 3 shots in quick succession dismasted his HMS Royal James, and the entire squadron of the Green withdrew from the battle to the south, protecting and towing the flagship. Nothing now prevented de Ruyter from attacking Monk as the English main force was routed. Many of the English ships were short on powder after 3 days of fighting. The Dutch boarded and captured 4 stragglers. Wassenaar captured HMS Clove Tree, and the Frisian Rear Admiral Hendrik Brunsveld captured HMS Convertiner. The entangled HMS Essex and HMS Black Bull later sank. De Ruyter, seeing the English fleet escape in a dense fog, decided to break off the pursuit. His own fleet was heavily damaged too. His logbook only speaks of a fear for the English shoals. The deeply religious De Ruyter interpreted the sudden unseasonal fog bank as a sign from God, that he merely wanted the enemy humbled for his pride but preserved from utter destruction. Results: the biggest sea battle of the Second Anglo-Dutch War and in the Age of Sail was a Dutch victory. However, the outcome is sometimes described as inconclusive because both sides initially claimed victory. Immediately after the battle, the English captains of Rupert's squadron, not having seen the final outcome, claimed De Ruyter had retreated first, then normally seen as an acknowledgement of the superiority of the enemy fleet. Though the Dutch fleet was eventually forced to end the pursuit, they had managed to cripple the English fleet, and lost but 4 smaller ships themselves, for the Spiegel refused to sink and was repaired. The contemporaneous Dutch view on this matter is expressed in a famous epigram by the poet Constantin Huygens: "To fight, and for their lives, the one that caused the row is beaten, but survives and boasts, I've won it now, as master of the field." And did he win? For sure. Face down, he couldn't yield. His victory was pure. The other took his hat, his rapier and his gold, and left him lying flat. The glorious field to hold, so master he has been. Our neighbors are the same. If thus they like to win, we wish them lasting fame. 2 months later, the recuperated English fleet challenged the Dutch fleet again, now much more successfully at Northfall and in the St. James's Day battle. This proved to be a partial victory as the Dutch fleet wasn't destroyed. The enormous costs of repair after both battles depleted the English treasury. So the 4 days battle is usually seen as both a tactical and important strategic victory for the Dutch.